Hey there, and welcome to my video. We are going to learn about Kubernetes and how we can leverage it to deploy a simple API application. So let's get started. Containers are a good way to bundle and run your application, but most often your application consists of multiple containers and you need a way to manage all these containers. For example, if one goes down, we want to ensure that there is no downtime. That's when Kubernetes comes into rescue. Kubernetes provides you with a system that manages your containers. It takes care of scaling and failover for your application, provides deployment patterns, and more. So next, we're going to deploy a simple Flask API application. First, we're going to deploy it using Docker, and then we're going to use Kubernetes. Right here, we have a simple Python Flask app, which consists of app.py, which has the code for our Hello World endpoint, and a Docker file which includes all the requirements and commands needed to assemble a Docker image. We're going to create this Docker image using docker build command -d is to tag our image using the name Flask API, and .is for to take whatever is in our current directory. We're going to then run the image using docker run -p is to expose port 5000 to outside so we can hit our endpoint from outside the Docker container. Then we're going to verify that our endpoint is up and running, and we see the right response. So right now I'm going to kill this Docker container and repeat the same process again, but this time using Kubernetes. To be able to run Kubernetes, you're going to need to install an application called Minikube. Minikube runs a single node Kubernetes cluster inside a VM on your laptop for you to try out Kubernetes. You're also going to need to install a kubectl command line. Once you've installed Minikube, you can use the Minikube start command, and you should be able to get an output like this if the installation was successful. So going back to the application we previously saw, we are going to deploy it this time using Kubernetes. But before that, we need to learn about pods. So we noticed that in Docker, the smallest atomic unit of computing is container. In Kubernetes, pods are the smallest deployable unit of computing. Containers are going to be created inside a pod, and we can have more than one container inside a pod, but for this tutorial, we're going to only have one, which is our API application. Another fact worth mentioning is that Kubernetes operates on a declarative model. This means we give Kubernetes a manifest file which describes the desired final state for a resource that we're expecting to have, but we don't exactly tell it how to do it. So for this tutorial, we're going to create a manifest file which describes the specification for our pod, and then Kubernetes is going to come back creating that pod for us. So here I created a file called flaskapi.yaml. This is the manifest file for our pod that we're going to use to create a pod in Kubernetes. So the kind of the resource for this manifest file is a pod. The name is Flask API. It's going to have one container inside called Flask API, and we are using the image that we previously built using Docker. And here is some specification about the memory limit that this container should have. So we're going to go ahead and create this pod. So our pod created. To check the status of all the running pods, you can use the kubectl get pods command, and we see that there's an error with this container. To know more about what this error is about, we can use another command. And we see more about this error. So the reason that we are seeing this error is because I've built this image using the Docker daemon that is inside my laptop, but Minikube has another Docker daemon inside, so it doesn't really have access to this image. So we have two options here. One would be to push this image to a Docker repository, and then give access to Minikube to pull this image. Or the second option that I'm going to go with is to point my Docker CLI to build this image inside the Docker daemon that is inside Minikube. So this way it will have access to it. So for that, there are certain steps that we need to follow. First, we need to point our Docker CLI to the Docker daemon inside Minikube and then build the Docker image again. I'm gonna use the same tag. There is one more step that we have to do, which is to tell Kubernetes to use this local image that we just created. So by putting this image pool policy never flag, it will know to use this image. So if I go ahead and run get pods again, going to delete this pod. And then I'm going to create the pod again. Okay, we'll wait for a few seconds and check the pod status again, so it's running. So the API application that we deployed using Kubernetes will be only available inside this pod. So to make sure that our API is up and running, we need to get an executable to this pod and then check the status of our API. We can do that by using this command, kubectl exec, and this references the name of our pod, and then the flag here. So if I try to hit the endpoint, so we see the response here. To be able to hit this endpoint from my laptop, we can leverage a command called kubectl port forward. So before that, we need to exit out of the pod and then run this following command. And then you can verify that by running the curl command from my laptop. We can see the response. Next video, we're gonna learn about Kubernetes services and how multiple pods can communicate with each other using Kubernetes services. And we're also going to learn about Kubernetes deployment. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.